How's it going, everyone? Jiivita here with a release overview for testing 246.5. So this has actually been a continuation from the previous test version, which I presume was 245. But anyway, to kind of give a rundown or recap on what this patch will actually add once it goes live are essentially sovereign worlds, which you can think of as rentable worlds or rentable servers, kind of like if you rented your own Minecraft server. However, a key difference here is that they will be connected to the main universe of Boundless, so to speak. So anybody running around on the public worlds, if you set the permissions, will be able to see your planet, be able to visit it, potentially even build on it. But again, you have control over who can see it, who can go there, who can build on it, etc., etc. Sovereign worlds will come in two different flavors. So there's the normal kind of survival world, acts exactly like any of the other worlds on the universe, other than the owner or the renter will have special control over essentially who can do what on said planet. The other variation that was covered in my previous videos is the creative world. So this is essentially creative mode and has all of the creative features you might expect. You can set it to where you can't die, you can fly around, you can give yourself anything in the game essentially, and you'll have unlimited blocks, your tools won't break, etc., so on and so forth. You can check out my two previous videos on this very same topic if you want a more in-depth of those features. This video is going to be focusing on some of the new additions to this update. It was also mentioned that this will be the last major content update for this release once it goes live. So there might be small updates fixing bugs, but there shouldn't be any new major features. So in addition to everything that was covered in the last two videos, there are some new permissions, particularly for the creative sovereign worlds. But now you can, for creative worlds, designate whether or not you want creatures to spawn as well as meteorites. So you could turn off creature spawning, but you would still get meteorites. And if you don't want the meteorites, you can of course turn those off as well. There's also a new permission for all citizens and individual citizens. It's called Can Edit, and this is also available on the survival worlds. And essentially what this does is, well, it says right there, any citizen may place or remove blocks outside of beacons on this sovereign world. So you can turn this on, it gives you a little warning, and then of course now anybody can come here and basically tear up the wild environment. So this is kind of a nice feature if you want to keep kind of the wild environment pristine, so to speak, and not worry about anybody coming along and tearing up the wilderness around your beacon, so to speak. So you don't have to beacon every last square inch of land that you want to preserve. You could just make it to where nobody can tear up the world unless they're doing it inside of their own beacon. So if you do give them beacon permissions, they'll be able to plot, build, tear up the area inside of their beacon. They just won't be able to do it in the wild. And coincidentally, I guess this will also prevent people from coming to your planet just to harvest blocks, which I can't see why that would be much of an issue unless it's right outside your doorstep, so to speak. So you can do this for both survival and creative worlds. So that is pretty cool. They've also kind of come up with a solution for connecting creative worlds to the survival universe. So there is a new type of warp conduit. That's this really pretty gold conduit right here. It has the interesting characteristic that it can only be configured in one possible shape. So if I can pull out my conduit here, it can only be in 2x8 sizes. So if I try to make it 3 wide over here, you can see that it's red. It won't let me place any more. And if I try to make it even taller, it won't let me do that either. So it's basically spam blocks until it won't let you place any more blocks at all. You can then interact with this and you can make a creative bridge token. So come over here, you can name it if you want to, and then drag it up into your inventory. And then you can head over to basically your closest survival world, which will be the world that the creative world is orbiting. So if that's not a mouthful, but anyway, come over here. This is the closest orbiting planet, or the planet that the creative world is orbiting. It's 1 blink second away. These special portals are limited to 1 blink second, so it can only go to the planet that it's orbiting. And you can of course build another one. Once you've placed all the conduits, you can then interact with it, and you can see that you can temporarily at least view your creative inventory. So you have a creative inventory and then a survival inventory. But that will allow you to pull your token down and place it into your creative bridge portal, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, creative bridge. So that is how you get those set up. These have the very interesting characteristic that they will always lead to the same location, even if you use a different bridge portal on the creative side. So in other words, all bridges will lead to your last survival location, and that is actually a now technical term, I suppose. If you come over here, it's listed under locations, just like say your home beacon is listed. Now your last survival location is saved, so to speak. And you can always return to that last survival location for free at any time. The really cool thing is that now you can also warp to any creative world for free from a survival location. So you can come over here, head over to worlds. So here is my creative world. I can warp to it for free, but then down here there's somebody else's creative world, and I can also warp to that for free, even though it's kind of on the other side of the universe. And the reason why they're allowing you to do this is that now there is no advantage to being able to do this for the survival side of things. So you can't go to a creative world, travel to several other creative worlds, and then exit into a different location into the survival universe. It will always return you back to your last known location on a survival planet. Of course, you could always just return to home for free from the creative universe, and that would of course put you in a different location, but again, you could already do that, so no added benefit there or advantage. So very, very nice. And you can't even set up, say, a creative hub for the orbiting planet, because again, you're always going to end up at the same spot that you left the survival universe from. So to kind of highlight this even further, we can head over to this other creative world, and that's another thing, is you can set up regular portals from one creative world to another creative world without any regard to portal size or distance. So I could do a 1x2 portal just as easily as I could do a 10x10 portal. So this creative world is now orbiting Betulia, I believe, but as you can see, it still leads to the exact same spot in the survival universe. So pretty cool. Come over here, we can come over to this B portal, head back over to the creative world, and you can see that both of these bridges now lead to the B location rather than the A location. So kind of messes with your head a little bit at first, but it's a really cool feature and will allow creative worlds to basically all be interconnected if they want to be interconnected. Another note on creative bridges is that if the bridge that you pass through is for some reason closed, you will no longer be able to go through other creative bridges. You still will be able to return to your last survival location, of course, for free, or return home for free, but that just seems to be a technical limitation, that if the bridge you went through closes, other bridges will just be the kind of cloudy and won't load, and so that will be your options to go through. Apparently there'll be like kind of tutorial type pop-ups that will let you know if that actually happens, on how to return back to the survival universe, etc., etc. It's good to note that creative bridges don't use any fuel whatsoever, no matter which side you are ultimately opening them up from. So very nice. Also, there is now the option to start on your sovereign world, whether it's creative or not. So you could create a new character and immediately go to your survival sovereign world. Hopefully in that case, it would be a low-level sovereign world. It might be a little bit of a hard start otherwise, but for those that are only interested in creative, you could set up your creative world and then start a character directly on it, without having to go through any of the survival experience whatsoever. Unfortunately, I guess the one caveat might be if you're playing with, say, a family, your family members, of course, going to need their own accounts, and I guess they won't be able to warp directly to a sovereign world, or your creative world, so to speak. So, but I could probably see some workarounds for that. But anyway. Okay, and moving along, there's now a new section in the shop called Redeem. And what this is for is that it allows you to buy time for a sovereign world and then apply it to any sovereign world in the game. So of course you could extend the time on your own sovereign world, but let's say you play with a guild on a sovereign world that's controlled by the guild. That way any of the guild members could extend the time for the given sovereign world to essentially keep it going, and that way it's not all on one person to, not only remember to add time, but to financially be responsible for the guild sovereign world. So if they lose interest in the game and move on, other guild members could pitch in and keep the world going. This also allows a random player to donate time to a given sovereign world that he or she particularly enjoys. So really nice feature. It says right here, keys bought from an external site can be redeemed in-game using this system. Keys are single use only. So pretty standard right there. Presumably it'll be the same site that you used to initially set up your sovereign world in the first place. Next up, they've added a way to remove individual beacons that are in your way, so that is a really cool feature. So all you have to do is enter the beacon that is basically offending you, and just to be clear, there's nothing personal against the owner of this beacon. They just happen to be right beside me, and a convenient way to test it out. Doesn't look like there's really anything important here, just a bunch of titanium. But anyway, you enter the beacon, go to your places, and I believe beacons, there you go. Now I can see the current beacon that I'm in, and you can, force reclaim this beacon. It says use your sovereign rights to force reclaim this beacon. So I guess we'll go ahead and go through the motions. It'll ask me to type in the full name of the beacon. And the world is against me. Like, no, don't reclaim the beacon. Oh, there we go. There we go. We've entered in the name, and now we can reclaim the beacon. It's kind of curious. I thought at one point you had to... Oh, I think that's if you remove all of a user's beacons. It'll then ask you, how many... It's either how many beacons or how many plots are going to be removed. But here you just apparently had to type in just the full name, not how many plots. So reclaim, and there we go. Now it's cool. Yeah, I got all of the outside plots first, and then finally the inside, because, well, it works from the outside and then towards the beacon. So very cool. Okay, moving back over to the creative side of things. I believe in my last video that I originally covered creative worlds, I said that forging was still a very much necessary thing if you, of course, wanted forged tools. But even that is essentially now a thing of the past, because you can come over to the knowledge tab and let's how about Umbrus? If I can spell right, and do a hammer, give, and as you can see, now you can literally pick any of the boons, the quirks, and even defects if you just for some reason wanted a defect. But this is a really cool feature because now you can essentially test drive like, oh, I wonder if a bow focusing on like debuffs is really all that useful, or maybe just testing out a particular debuff. So come over to bows, give, and so there's like what? Weakness, slow, oh, and let them bleed. I think those are the 3 debuffs. Seems like maybe there's another one, but now you could actually test all of that out, or any particular combination that you can dream up, so to speak. So you can do energy saver, and as you can see, you just click multiple times to get the different ranks of said boon. Busy bee, so that would be faster action speed, so you could shoot faster, I suppose. How about some damage? That's critical. There we go. There's devastating damage, so that's always a good one to have. Let's see here. We don't really care that much about energy, but anyway, I guess you get the idea here. Is that you can just pick out everything that you want, even like the ideal like best of health quirk, so that gives you extra action speed as long as your health is high, so that's always a good one to have. There's even another one that gives you reduced energy usage, but hey, we're on creative, so we don't really care about energy usage, but still really nice. And this alleviates you having to learn how to forge on creative. You can just give yourself all of the stuff and truly focus on building if that's the only thing you want to focus on. For the testing side of things, also a pretty invaluable feature. So very nice. And of course, add to creative inventory when you're happy with whatever you've created. And to cover at least 2 frequently asked questions, at least at the time of recording. Number 1 is cost. So still there's no information about how much Sovereign Worlds will cost to rent. So I'm sorry. And then the second one that kept coming up from particular users was the ability to ban essentially an entire account from visiting your Sovereign World. So I guess you wanted to leave your Sovereign World open to, so that everybody could visit, but then you want to exclude certain bad actors. You can always do that by removing permissions from individual characters, but currently there's no way to do it for an entire account. And part of that has to do with that Boundless never exposes or displays usernames. That's considered private information. Certainly there are workarounds, but the devs don't really feel that it's possibly worth the time investment in developing it. The devs even commented directly on this, stating if a user is being that much of a bad actor to purposely continuously delete and create new characters just to troll somebody, that it would be rare enough that a moderator could simply ban them from the entire game itself, instead of having to implement a feature to remove an entire user from a Sovereign World. And particularly if they're willing to go to that lengths, it's possible they'd even just have extra accounts that they could then use to create new characters on, etc., etc. One workaround would be to simply not allow anybody on the Sovereign World and only cherry pick permissions to certain individuals. Certainly that's not an ideal workaround, but ultimately is an option if you're just having a huge amount of trouble with somebody trying to be rather annoying to you. But particularly with the new permissions of can edit, and not only that, you can control who can have beacons in the first place. Even if they are coming to bug you, there's not a whole lot they can do. They can't tear up the wild environment, they can't beacon to do anything nefarious with beacons or plots, so really all they can do is stand there and try to talk to you, I suppose. And at which case you can promptly remove them from the world itself. So kind of I feel a bit of a moot point, but everybody has their own opinion. Okay, well I think that covers everything quite nicely. This was Jiivita. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe if you want to see anything more like this, and if there's anything you didn't like, please let me know down below. Also, if you like my channel and want to get cool perks, check out my Patreon page. Until next time, peace.